On this edition of Southern Newsweek, an end of an era as Rio Tinto says the 50-year-old Tiwai Point aluminium smelter is set to close. Tears and terse words as former Otago Regional Council Chair Marion Hobbs is voted out. And the open for business signs are out at hotels in Queenstown. Kia ora, I'm Melissa Barton. 1,000 workers are set to lose their jobs as Rio Tinto says the aluminium smelter at Tiwai Point is no longer viable. The 50-year-old facility has been a backbone of employment in the region.
After nearly 50 years, international mining giant Rio Tinto is planning to wind down Tiwai Point's aluminium smelter in a year's time, saying it's no longer viable. The smelter's general manager says he's extremely disappointed, and his first concern is the health and welfare of the staff working there.
So what that means is my real focus for today and over the next period is on the people of Tiwai, their safety and their well-being. We have over 1,000 Southlanders who walk through these gates behind me every day. They're producing an amazing product, some of the lowest carbon, highest purity aluminium in the world, and it's extremely disappointing that we couldn't reach a decision that enables us to continue to keep doing that.
Despite last year being one of the smelter's most productive in 10 years, a reduction in aluminium prices and higher operating costs have seen a drop in earnings for the company. Today's announcement followed a lengthy strategic review, which meant a lot of uncertainty for the entire Southland community for almost a year.
So it's been a 9-month process, pretty extensive, and there have been a significant amount of intense negotiations that have gone on over that time frame. No one could have foreseen the impact that COVID-19 would have had on not just the strategic review but on the economy and the world's health. It certainly has had an impact on delaying the strategic review, but as soon as the decision's made, we want to do the best for our people, and that is really my focus at the moment. And the best thing is to let our people know that a decision has been made and this is the outcome from that.
On top of the 1,000 workers employed at the smelter, the plant is thought to create another 1,600 jobs in the wider community.
Certainly when the decision's made, it's quite shocking and is devastating, and even myself very devastated to have to deliver that news, and it's not a good day for our people, for Southland or for New Zealand.
Tiwai Point is the country's largest electricity consumer, and Meridian Energy are already warning higher power prices could follow the plant's closure. In Southland, the South Today.
After weeks of political point scoring, a new Otago Regional Council Chair has been elected. Andrew Noon is taking over from Marion Hobbs, who was voted out by councillors this week. The meeting wasn't without controversy against a backdrop of protest.
There were heated scenes at this morning's extraordinary ORC meeting to remove Marion Hobbs as the Otago Regional Council's chair. The change in chairmanship wasn't without some parting barbs from other councillors or objections from protesters inside council chambers.
This is the hardest I have ever had, the hardest. First of all, I had people shouting at each other, and I had people stuttering as a result of being shouted at by the councillors. We withdrew and considered that.
Hobbs abstained from voting on her fate, with 9 voting to have her removed and 2 councillors supporting her. She'd heard of personal attacks about her mental state from friends, and doesn't believe that sort of personal attack would have been used if she were male.
A lot of the stuff was Marion's stressed, and as one lovely woman wrote to me, whenever a woman has a diverse opinion or a strong point of view, she's either a mad bugger or she's stressed.
As the votes were cast, Hobbs supporters and protesters became rowdy, throwing the meeting into disorder. Dunedin Green Party candidate Jack Brazil was asked to leave the meeting by Chair Michael Laws, before Laws adjourned the meeting in an attempt to calm tensions in the room. When the meeting was reconvened, Michael Laws called for candidates for the role of chair. Michael Deakin nominated Andrew Noon, who accepted.
Look, it's good that this process is complete and it was done in a orderly and respectful manner. So I'm just pleased that we can get back to business and get on with what we're expected to do on behalf of the region. So.
10 councillors supported his appointment, and 2, including Hobbs, abstained. Noon says going through a process like this, there's always going to be strong opinions around the table. But his plan is for a unified council, using the expression he waka kanoa, meaning a canoe we're all in.
You might see, as an observer here today, there's some division, but like I say, there is a lot of unity in terms of the things we want to do for this region.
He says the ORC under him will be a team of 12. In Dunedin, the South Today.
Embattled Clutha Southland MP Hamish Walker's decision to resign was the only option according to his party's leader. Todd Mueller spoke about Walker's resignation as he made a transport announcement in Ashburton.
Clutha Southland MP Hamish Walker in happier times, seen here in file footage celebrating his being voted into Parliament in 2017, with almost 3 times as many votes as his Labour opponent. While announcing new policy in Ashburton this afternoon, National Party leader Todd Mueller said Walker made the right decision earlier today to resign after he leaked the personal details of COVID-19 patients.
This was the only option because, as we have well traversed, the events of the last few days have not reflected, from my perspective, the appropriate National Party behaviour and values. And unfortunately for Hamish, he has had to make the decision that he has.
Mueller says people need to remember the human element in Walker's resignation.
He has worked very hard for his community over the last 3 years, and ultimately it was an error of judgment, a serious error of judgment that has cost him his career. And so there is a human element to this that we must not forget at these times, that this is a man who has given his all for his community and will be feeling very, very challenged and disappointed. But it's the right decision, and I acknowledge that. And now, of course, we seek to move on.
Walker says he leaked the personal details of patients to expose the government's shortcomings so they would be rectified. In Ashburton, the South Today.
Despite being badly impacted by the fallout from COVID-19, one hotel chain still sees Queenstown as a place to do business. The new 227-room Holiday Inn Express opens its doors at a time when visitor numbers are drastically down on those experienced during the tourism boom of the past decade.
Opening during a pandemic sounds like a challenge, but the owners of Queenstown's newest hotel are confident they're making the right decision. The 227-room Holiday Inn Express opens its doors next Friday at a time when visitor numbers are drastically down on those experienced during the tourism boom of the past 6 or 7 years. General Manager Jason Sabin says, despite the global situation and the dour economic outlook, there are already some positive signs.
We understood that operating with a closed borders, local domestic market only would still provide its own challenges, but New Zealand is leading the world in terms of its management of the pandemic. And when they announced that domestic travel was permitted, it gave us the confidence to open our doors.
The 2-year, $60 million build, which at its peak had about 250 workers, covers a site bordered by Stanley, Sydney and Melbourne streets. Sabin says the company is pleased they've been able to create some jobs in the hard-hit resort town and is happy the hotel didn't open before the pandemic arrived.
Queenstown has sort of been quite hardly hit by the effects of the pandemic, and we found ourselves in a fortunate position to be able to support the community, and the timing worked out well for us to be able to employ people. At
first, the hotel will operate at just below half its capacity, but Sabin says it will look to expand its room offerings, particularly if a trans-Tasman bubble is established between Australia and New Zealand.
We're opening up 98 rooms first, and then as demand increases for our room types, we'll make more rooms available.
Owned by Australian developer Pro Invest Group, it's the company's first Holiday Inn Express branded hotel in New Zealand, a brand used by more than 2,400 hotels worldwide. In Queenstown, the South Today.
The Dunedin City Council has announced changes to what plastics can be recycled. Waste Minimisation Officer Catherine Gledhill hopes the changes will influence people's choices at the supermarket.
The rules are changing in regards to which plastics can be recycled.
That we're no longer going to be accepting certain types of plastic, but what we need to focus on is what we will be accepting, so numbers 1, 2 and 5. And the reasons for that is that actually there's very little market for the remainder, so the 3, 4s, 6s and 7s, and actually they only make up about 3% of the packaging that you might find in the supermarket anyway.
DCC Waste Minimisation Officer Catherine Gledhill is asking people to shop smarter and says some products have clear directions on them spelling out what can be recycled and what can't. And she says, if in doubt, leave it out.
If it doesn't have a number, like I've searched this high and low for a recycling number and can't find one, so I'm going to dispose of that to the rubbish.
Most of the city's plastic is recycled offshore, but she says some is recycled locally. Gledhill says the Dunedin City Council isn't acting alone on this, as other local government organisations are making similar changes.
There's a number of councils across New Zealand now who have adopted much the same idea, so only accepting 1, 2s and 5s. Some aren't taking 5s, but we are. And also the removal of caps, lids, tops, whether it's glass bottle or plastic, we want those off as well now.
She says plastic caps aren't being accepted either, as they have been contaminating otherwise clean recycling products. The changes come into effect on Monday, and the council says inspectors will be checking recycling bins for contamination and reminding people of the changes. In Dunedin, the South Today.
Still to come on Southern Newsweek. Unemployed tourism sector workers become gainfully employed in trail building. And Invercargill celebrates as the first domestic jet lands, bringing Kiwi tourists to town. Welcome back. Tourism workers are beavering away on 3 pilot projects, which could be a new dawn for Queenstown employment. The workers have been redeployed into wilding control in Arrowtown, building a bike trail in Shotover and making pest traps.
Queenstown's out-of-luck tourism workers are beavering away on 3 new pilot projects that could lead to a new dawn for employment in the resort town. Workers from the town's big tourism companies have been redeployed into wildland control, building a bike trail in Shotover and making traps for pests. Queenstown Lakes District Council Recovery Manager Stephen Batstone says the pilot program is just one way the council is helping those impacted by the fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic.
We're piloting a way in which we can get people who are displaced from tourism jobs into jobs in nature. So this is a trail building project. It's a small one down on the banks of Shotover River that has allowed us to start to explore and understand exactly how we can do this efficiently and effectively and safely. So it's about finding the right people, testing the models and the systems to get it done, and you get a cool little pump track out of it for the kids of Shotover country. So yeah, it's very much about learning and understanding how this can be done better when more money comes from central government, regional government into these types of projects.
Shotover trail designer Fraser Gordon is one of those tourism workers who has lost his job because of the pandemic.
With the COVID-19 situation, the workforce in Queenstown have taken a pretty massive hit through tourism. So these guys are all working at building a mountain bike trail down here on the Shotover Delta. We all obviously used to work in tourism. These guys are from Bungie. I was with Go Orange, and now we're getting something done for the community, which is pretty cool.
Fraser says the crew are adapting well to the new outdoor jobs, and some even enjoy it.
Obviously it's a different kind of work, it's quite physical, and we're out here in the middle of the winter in the elements, but they're loving it.
Work on the 700 metre mountain bike course began last week, and it's hoped the trail will eventually become a loop, helping the council's bid for money from the government's $1.3 billion Job for Nature program. In Queenstown, the South Today.
New National Party leader Todd Muller may have been hoping for a quiet day away from Wellington when he flew into Dunedin recently. As it turned out, his troubles followed him south as he toured the city's burgeoning tech businesses.
Hi guys, I just have had a fantastic day here in Dunedin.
Todd Muller took his first trip to the Deep South as the National Party's leader yesterday, touring one of Dunedin's leading technology companies. Muller was accompanied on tour of the medtech company 80 Instruments by Dunedin-based MP Michael Woodhouse and Tyree candidate Liam Kernahan. Despite being thousands of kilometres away from Wellington, the leader of the opposition couldn't avoid questions about the conduct of his MP Woodhouse. A photo of who holding a toilet seat with Dunedin South Labour MP Claire Curran's face on it was published at the weekend. Muller and Woodhouse both refused to comment on the matter.
Look, my focus is on pulling together an economic recovery plan for this country, and so is New Zealand's focus.
Do you regret that now, Michael? Look, I've made no public or social media comments about that in 8 years, and I don't intend to do so now.
Though he sounded much more comfortable when asked if Kinahan would win the Taieri seat for National, a seat which, despite many changes over the years, is a Labour stronghold.
You betcha, yeah. The feeling on the ground's fantastic. We've got a superb candidate in Liam Kinahan. He's from this area, and I think that's important. What people look for in their politicians is authenticity and a connection with the community and a real passion for the people and the community of this area, and I have every confidence that we'll win Taieri.
After touring the 80 Instruments headquarters in Vogel Street, Muller took part in a business breakfast hosted by the Otago Chamber of Commerce at the Dunedin Club, where he outlined National's vision to the city's business community.
Superb being hosted here in ADI, brilliant company taking the best of New Zealand thinking to the world. It's a great privilege to be hosted by them and getting a sense of what sits in front of them.
It didn't get much better for Muller during the day, with his Clutha Southland MP Hamish Walker later outing himself as the person who leaked confidential information about positive COVID-19 patients to the media. In Dunedin, the South Today.
It took exactly 100 days, but Air New Zealand's jet service from Auckland to Invercargill is back in business. Southland's civic leaders and public turned up to celebrate the return of the passenger jets at Invercargill's airport.
A special bag of Southland goodies was given to each passenger who had flown from Auckland on the first Air New Zealand flight to Invercargill yesterday. Great South Chief Executive Graham Budd says the return of passenger jets will be a boost of confidence for the southernmost city.
Well, it's a real sign of confidence in our place and really connects us with Auckland. For people travelling for business or for visiting friends and family or for holiday. Really great day today.
The jet service was originally launched in August last year and had offered 6 a.m. departures from Invercargill, allowing both business people and fresh seafood to get to Auckland 2 hours later. Now the earliest flight leaving Invercargill was pushed back to 7 a.m, but Air New Zealand CEO Greg Foran says earlier flights are under review.
As things evolve, we'll continue to review the schedules, and that's our commitment wherever we are. So I get that, previously the ability to leave here at 6 in the morning, do a full day's work, get home at about 7:30 is a big deal. We'll continue to review that, but this is the first phase, and I think it reflects a little bit more about what people want, which is probably more leisure travel just at the moment.
Foran says he wants to see his planes filled to about 80% capacity, and he's hopeful a new breed of domestic tourist will help achieve that.
There's a lot of New Zealanders who can't travel overseas at the moment, and they're saying to themselves, well, I can't go overseas, so where can I go for a holiday? And why not come down here? Why not come down and actually see a part of the world that maybe I was going to put off until I retired, or maybe it was, it was on the list, but it was number 12. Well, now make it number 1. And we're actually seeing that behaviour play itself out at the moment.
Foran said the Southland reception was probably the liveliest one he'd seen since Air New Zealand resumed connections to destinations across New Zealand. In Invercargill, the South Today.
The St Vincent de Paul Society say they are overwhelmed by the generosity of school pupils. Almost a dozen Catholic schools collected non-perishable food in recognition of needy families across the city.
Dunedin's St Vincent de Paul's food bank got a boost this week thanks to the generosity of local Catholic schools.
So last week, 10 schools of the community of Catholic learning came together and had brought donations of hygiene products and non-perishable foods to put towards St Vincent de Paul.
The non-perishable food was sorted out in Kavanagh College's auditorium yesterday by pupils who, after coming out of lockdown, saw a need to support others in the Dunedin community.
We talked about how making a little donation can make a big impact on some people's lives, and that as part of a community we can do that to help out each other.
The pupils say they realised they can make a huge difference to the lives of others.
We're donating food to St Vincent de Paul so that the people who don't have as much as us can get something to eat. We will be giving the food to our community so everybody can get something to eat so people won't be hungry.
The food collection was also part of the pupils' social justice project for this year. In Dunedin, the South Today.
After the break on this edition of Southern Newsweek, we meet Port Chalmers artist Jim Cooper at his first exhibition in many years. And we also meet local social media royalty, a Dunedin-based YouTuber with 1 million subs. So see you after the break. Thanks for staying with us. People visiting Dunedin Airport can now learn about the science of flight, thanks to a new interactive display. The exhibit is part of a long-running promotion of the Otago Museum for passengers to enjoy while they wait for their plane.
Dunedin Airport Chief Executive Richard Roberts and Otago Museum Director Ian Griffin have a play with a flight simulator at Dunedin Airport. The public are invited to try out their aviation designs on this interactive exhibit while they wait for a real plane. It's the first of a series of new exhibits promoting the Otago Museum.
We've always had a display here, but we wanted to showcase some of the really cool things that are going on at the museum. So we've opened a whole bunch of new exhibits, including an amazing flight table, which allows you to kind of play with how things fly.
Roberts says the upgrade to the airport displays was put together with younger passengers in mind.
Certainly for the younger generations, I think it's a bit more interesting now. And I don't know, let's see what we get from the feedback, but it's pretty cool.
And he's expecting there to be a lot more use of the interactive displays when the school holidays start next week.
Should be busy next week, a lot more jets flying in and out of the city, so yeah, anybody who's flying out, just come and take time to have a look. And if you're flying in and you don't want to get into Dunedin, which I understand you want to get there quickly, then just have a few minutes in here.
The Otago Museum is intending to add more features to the airport annex in the upcoming months, showcasing the science learning at the Otago Museum. In Dunedin, the South today.
Port Chalmers-based artist Jim Cooper is having his first solo exhibition in a few years in Dunedin. The sculptor is known for his use of vibrant colours across a variety of media and is pleased to be showing for the first time in a while.
Artist Jim Cooper's work has ranged from material pieces to ceramics, and now he's branching out into a new, more malleable direction, partially due to COVID-19.
I couldn't access materials, so paper mache, I couldn't find any paint during lockdown, so I started to cover the work with fabric and gift wrap and just things that I could source easily.
Whereas his fabric works are sewn using a fairly heavy-duty machine, and ceramic pieces are kiln-fired, with both processes creating permanent artworks which are tricky to revisit. He says paper mache can easily be reworked.
I can revisit it and come back to it and put it away and come back to it. The thing with ceramic being that it needs to go in a kiln, it needs to be fired, and when it's dry it's difficult to add to it. So a lot of decision making goes on in the making process that's quite final.
It's been a while since Cooper held a solo show, as is partially evident by the sheer number of pieces at Dunedin's Brett McDowell Gallery. Cooper says there are a few reasons why his colourful art has been in the shadows.
I don't know how to define that. I'd just come to the end of something and it just wasn't time. It wasn't time to show, it wasn't time to share the work, it was just time to just wait. I think probably, it's just about being.
Jim Cooper's first solo show in a couple of years opens at the Brett McDowell Gallery in Dunedin on Friday, July the 3rd. In Dunedin, the South today.
He's starred in a TV show, released an album, hung out with celebrities, and now has racked up more than 1 million subscribers on YouTube. Social media star Kimpoi Feliciano admits people might be surprised to learn he's living in little old Dunedin.
27-year-old Dunedin man Kimpoi Feliciano has received his Gold Award from YouTube in recognition of having 1 million subscribers to his channel.
Ma, 1 million ako sa YouTube. Si Dad.
But it's not been an overnight success for Feliciano, who started putting up videos of himself and his travels back in 2011, after he and his family emigrated to New Zealand from the Philippines.
So when I started doing my online videos, it was actually just to connect to my friends, my Filipino friends, and it just happened that people from the Philippines actually got interested in my life here in New Zealand.
He says a lot of his YouTube videos are different from the usual youth culture topics such as makeup and travel.
We're only like mga 40 minutes to 1 hour away.
Since becoming famous on YouTube, he's starred in Filipino television shows and released his own album. But he says some in his family remain a little bemused by his success.
Mine is more of a personal. So like my viewers are actually people who kind of want to see someone's life, you know. Like I document my travels, I document moments with my family, with my friends.
Feliciano's daily videos frequently reach more than 300,000 views. In Dunedin, the South Today.
And that wraps up this edition of Southern Newsweek. For the latest news from the Southern region, head online to odt.co.nz and follow Channel 39 and the ODT on social media. Ka kite anō.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.